What's up, everybody? Your average esports podcast is back. I just realized I completely misspelled that in the title, but whatever. It doesn't matter.
Whatever.
I messed up the acronyms. Doesn't matter, but we're back and we're raring to go because there's a lot of shit that happened between this one and the last one. We're not going to go over all of it. We're just going to go over some of the highlights and some of the big Dota stuff because there is a lot of Dota shit that is going down right now. And I guess we'll start off with quick news. First, actually, I'm going to go to Overwatch. I didn't put this in the docket, but we don't even need to talk about it. Basically, here's what's happening. Shanghai Dragons are 4 games away from the 040 dream, my dream.
The 040 dream.
And you know what? I used to believe that crowd audiences had no power over the results of players in esports because it's not like they're pressuring the refs. It's not like you can even fucking hear them. But I am starting to come to believe that just because I would like to believe in my own vanity that somehow my own desire for Shanghai Dragons to lose has somehow completely wiped out the rest of the audience's power for them to win. So we will see who is victorious in the end, me or the entire rest of China and the world. Now, moving on to much more interesting things. CSGO, I guess we'll start off with that because that's there has been a lot of tournaments in CSGO, but there are basically 3 big things we will talk about here. The first is Astralis is the best team in the fucking world. It's not even close. Have you seen any of their games?
Yes, it is brutal almost the way they play. It feels like I kind of would have wished that, you know, Starletter, like at the end of towards the end, like Starletter just decides, all right, fuck it, we're just gonna fly in Astralis last minute. Because this Navi right now versus Astralis, that would have been dope to watch, I think.
It would have been pretty dope, yes.
But yeah, no, Astralis is definitely the best team in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to take anything away from them, but at the same time, one of the reasons why they are the best team in the world is because nobody else is stepping up to the plate.
Mm-hmm.
We considered, I think, for the longest time whether or not Liquid could maybe take it.
Yeah.
Mousesports obviously early on looked like a team that could potentially win a tournament here or there, but I think the recent performances from both teams have shown that they're not really like championship material.
Yeah.
Like Mouse is definitely never gonna like have their own era. Maybe they're gonna win a tournament, maybe they're gonna get into the finals, but like I think Yanko put it really nicely. Like they just don't have the mentality to be a championship team.
Yep.
And I could really tell it the way they conduct themselves in that final was just disappointing, really.
Yeah, they needed some of that Fnatic like superpower clutch. You know what I'm talking about? The one where like I am Katowice against FaZe. That was some championship level clutch right there, right? And as for Liquid, you can actually say something very similar, except unlike Mouse, they're all really young. Actually, I think Mouse is pretty young too, but it just feels like they have more potential to grow. So we'll see there because like they generally get. It's weird with them, at least, just because they either dominate or get dominated. But at least in their one finals against Astralis, they kind of showed they could like run it up against Astralis.
With Mousesports, I think we've been seeing them ramp up for like months up to this level, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like for them to be able to go further seems so unlikely. Whereas for Liquid, we've only seen them play in this form very recently, actually, because they obviously made a roster change or a couple of roster changes in the past couple of months now. So for us watching Liquid play, I think it just feels like, all right, they're good right now, but obviously we still have yet to see the best of this team. Whereas for Mousesports, it almost feels like they've hit their ceiling.
Yeah.
I'm not. Again, I do think that they going forward in other tournaments they could still become a threat, like semifinals, maybe even a finals occasionally, but just doesn't feel like they could win. Whereas, like you said, with Liquid, we definitely think that there's more for them to come.
Yeah. And to get back on the point, like basically Astralis. I sent this question to Max Millet because I think he was at IEM Sydney where they were at the time, and I'm like, so you got to ask Astralis this. Like, what do you mean? You got to ask them if they ever sent flowers, if they ever sent chocolates, if they ever sent congratulatory gifts to the greatest GM they have ever had, KRB. That's right, KRB. It was the solution, and the solution was kicking himself out and bringing in Magisk. That was the answer, and my God, it has been incredible since then. I just gotta point that out there. Like apparently the best Danish GM is Kirby. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And I also agree with you. Basically, it feels like Astralis is ascending to another level, but at the same time, a bunch of the teams have like decelerated. So it doesn't feel like I'll put it this way. I think like Astralis can match up against like any of the all-time great teams and be a very fun match. But none of the other teams of this era can match up to like the contention teams of the other eras. So you think back about like Fnatic 2015, they had to fight Envious,
Right.
they had to fight Nip Magic, they had to fight Virtus Pro, they had to fight Astralis, TSM back then. Those were all really good teams, and all of them, but like these current contenders just don't match up to those. So that's my current problem. But
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, that's why I said that, yeah, it's great. And I think Astralis plays really, say, Counter-Strike, and it's all very clinical, very clean, very, I don't know, it's just very good Counter-Strike, but yeah, there's currently no contest for them, right? There's no one to actually, to push them even further, where we could say, wow, Astralis not only is the best team right now, but they're constantly beating this team, like, at every turn. It feels like they need this, like, SK, FaZe, whatever team that could, maybe even Avi, who knows? They need that team that constantly pushes them further and further, and we at least think, all right, Astralis might, like, this might be the event where Astralis doesn't win against this team, but right now, it doesn't feel that way. Maybe with
Yeah, basically
Navi
like
now.
last year, at the very beginning, it was like Virtus Pro was really pushing Astralis, and then after Virtus Pro fell out, FaZe and SK did it and actually overtook Astralis. So yeah, I get what you mean. But speaking of people who are untouchable, there's this player. His name is Simple. I've actually called
Crazy.
the period from end of 2017 to basically, depends on how you want to put it, the first 4 or 5 months or 6 months of 2018 as the Simple era. So basically, he has reached a ceiling unlike any. Apparently, nobody's ever seen it. Like, I've gone back and watched like a bunch of the old CS:GO VODs. Like, I think he's the best I've ever seen, at least in this particular game. But apparently, like, people who've watched like CS 1.6 are like, no, this is like the craziest we've ever seen. And this guy is absolutely out of fucking control because he's taking spots where he should die, but he doesn't die. He's taking duels that are impossible, but with him, it's possible. He's hitting wall bangs that are literally like 1 in 1,000. He's hitting like 2 of them within like 3 rounds. Like this, like he's got the best pistols. He's got the best scout. He's got the best op. He's got the best rifle. Like this is absolutely disgusting.
And the thing is, a lot of people early on, even I would say even up until like a couple of weeks ago, a lot of people were, or maybe even prior to this event, a lot of people were saying, yeah, Simple looks good because he's in a team that's like really trash, right? But now we've seen him in a team that's actually, I mean, this event they were pretty good.
Yeah,
And
I
he's
have no
still,
complaints.
like,
Almost.
he's still like 2 levels above them.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, like. Simple is just insane. I think if you look at all of esports right now, there's no individual performer that is better than Simple right now.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like I basically said, like he's the best show in esports, just because he's so ridiculous.
Yeah, you might as well already like send him the esports industry award, like all the trophies. Like there's no way anybody, legitimately, somebody will have to be consistently good in the next 6 months. In like not even good, like consistently badass.
Like, they gotta be a god the next 6 months. And Simple has a drop off. Like, these 2 things have to happen if somebody wants to beat him, basically.
It's absolutely insane. Simple, I don't know. Honestly, Simple, like, that's why at every event when Simple's not there, everybody's like, oh, if only Navi was here, we could see the Simple show, right?
Yeah.
Simple is absolutely insane. There's so many, I don't know, there's so many things to be said. Imagine if Simple had joined SK. Him and Cold Zero. Like Cold Zero actually showed up in that event as well. He's like,
he showed up for that one game, that absolute monster of a game, though. It was an absolute monster of a game, the best game of the tournament by far. I wouldn't say the CS was like good or perfect. I don't think it was. Like I thought it got messy at points, but Cold Zero himself was playing like a fucking god. It's like that was peak level Cold Zero against peak level Simple. That's exactly what you want, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, like I said, it only lasted like for that one game.
It was a long ass game. I'll give him credit, but it's like they both even ended up like very similar frag scores, like 41-40, and both of them had very. If you looked at the individual kills they both had like very impactful kills. Like Simple was getting all the opening kills, all the opening duels, a bunch of the clutches, but Cold Zero in those like Coldzera, like typical Coldzera fashion, is like you get into that point where he's like the shot of shots, the buzzer beater, the end of the line, and he breaks it out every time. Wins like 1v2s in overtime to take the entire thing. Absolute monster game, in my opinion. Just for individual performances, right? And yeah, basically, like I said, simple era. It's a great era to live in.
I think it's absolutely cool that we get to see this. It's like, I don't know, it's like watching like Michael Jordan in his prime, Kobe Bryant, like these, being able to like see these individual performers in like a team game, being like the absolute, undoubtedly the greatest.
Yeah.
Like nobody at this point doubts that he's the greatest CS:GO player right now.
Yeah.
If you doubt it, you're just haven't seen the game of his. Like honestly, it is, I don't know, it's such a joy to watch, and I just hope that Navi can keep the form up, like the rest of the team. Yeah. Because if they keep it up, they'll attend more events, we'll see more simple, I think everybody wins.
Yeah. And
Navi wins.
I do have to say, Zeus actually like proved his like promise. He's basically said at the very start, at the very start of this project, he said it's going to take me a long time to get this thing running, because that's just how he is as the in-game leader apparently. And I mean, it took a long time, but it's running now.
Well, at least for this event, obviously, you know, they have to, or he has to prove that.
He has to prove, right? But like, basically, as far as I'm concerned, basically what happened was like he kept making a bunch of mistakes, but he kept fixing them over a long period of time. Like when he got Electronic, like put Electronic in a support role. No, that's like the wrong role for him. Now he's a secondary star. Good role for him. Flamey has been shifted back. Edward is still pretty bad, but at least he came up clutch here at this particular tournament.
Speaking of coming up clutch, Zeus has actually gotten a lot of clutch kills and rounds in this tournament. Like, he himself was one of the absolute worst players in the past couple of months. Like, individually speaking, he constantly bottom fragged. He constantly had one digits in terms of kills. Really low ADRs. I don't know. He actually honestly, if he didn't play, like if Simple didn't exist and they still perform, like if they still win that event, almost give Zeus that MVP.
Almost, but except Simple does exist, and
Simple does exist. Yeah.
Simple does indeed exist. But yeah, basically, when I think about stats, because just jumping off of your point, there are two types of stats where like it will immediately tell you something is going on. The first is simple stats, where it's like, oh, you literally broke every single record possible. What the fuck? Right? As like you go with Zeus stats, like, oh my god, you are so fucking terrible. And then everything else in between, you need like more context. You need to figure out what their role is in the game. But between those two is like it's pretty vast. But the fact that Zeus has gone up is a very big improvement for them. And I also think it's hilarious how they play Mirage, because like it's like we all know everybody's coming after Zeus, but every once in a while Simple will be there instead of Zeus. So it's this weird like mind game between them. It's like, is it Zeus or is it Simple that time? But yeah, I'm liking where Navi is going. I still think Adren is the answer. If they were going to make a roster move, which I doubt they will, I think Adren would be the answer. You just bring him in for Edward, but it's very unlikely that's going to happen.
See, that's the thing though, right? Like a team that wins is very unlikely going to make a roster change.
Yeah.
That's. I think I mentioned it, but I want to say on Twitter. I'm not sure if we actually did a show afterwards or since then, but in Dota, Mineski, like I'm pretty sure if I think they should have lost the AC in hindsight. I absolutely think they should have lost the AC. Maybe bombed out like after groups or something, because now they decided not to make a roster change, and I think it's the worst choice for them going forward, at least for TI. So I don't know. I think this could also hurt Navi potentially. Like if you cannot get it right now, I'm not sure the situation with Gambit. Gambit's been wonky, but if you can get him now, obviously you should. I think I agree with you. But yeah, like I said, just because they won that event, they might just have that sort of like false hope, like, nah, we can do this in the long run. Yeah. We'll win the major this way. And I mean, if all of them show up like they did this event, maybe even better, obviously.
I think they'll need to be better, like not Simple. Simple's already Simple already. Here's the funny thing about Simple. I thought he was already the best player like 4 months ago, right? And so I was like, okay, surely at this point nobody could ever top what Simple is doing now. Apparently he topped himself. I didn't.
He called it actually.
Yeah.
Lurpus made that tweet and he's like, no, I'll be better, trust me. And yeah, here we go.
Yeah. So yes, listen, Simple can't keep getting away with it. He can't keep like topping himself. That's impossible. I think surely at this point he has reached the max point. But it's the others that'll have to go up, because even though like I have like all this praise for Navi also have a Simple, so it's like you get supercharged, especially in a game like CS where there's more individual skill that can be shown at times if you're a superstar player. So we'll have to see how that goes. But I think that ends it for CSGO, because we're not going to go over all the tournaments and stuff. Been too long, and there's still a lot more to go. But now we're going to the main feature of this one. The reason we're doing this is because today Valve released a blog about the new DPC, the Dota Pro circuit for 2018 to 2019. And this is something very important to all Dota people. And I actually wrote an entire article. It was like, here's how you should improve it. And while they didn't necessarily follow a bunch of my ideas, they did in fact address like a bunch of the problems. So they understood that there were problems, right?
Yeah. I think that's the most important part, the fact that they realized that the old circuit had, like, everybody, when the system was announced, everybody's like, oh yeah, this is a step in the right direction. But honestly, and I don't want to rub my toot my own horn or anything, but I immediately said, guys, on paper there's already a couple of issues that need to be addressed. Like, this cannot happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that this has happened now, but I feel like a couple of these things could have been addressed even halfway through the season. Like, would it have been so bad to not have the roster lock? Like, if they just retroactively said, "Oh, you guess what?" Or obviously, even pre-roster lock, people were like, "No, guys, you can't make a roster lock that lasts like 8 months. That's that." Like, all the pro players said, "This is not going to work." Would it have been so bad for Valve to say, "You know what, you guys, you have a point. Let's not do it." Instead, they still decide to do it, and they kind of mess up the scene that way, because now teams are forced to make these really bad roster decisions.
Yep.
Just close before TI, and again, this could have been especially Valve should know, because this has happened before.
There's a bunch of experience here.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like they had to go far back in the history books to get this one, right?
But again, I'm glad that this has been addressed from Valve, that they realized that they done goofed, and I think the next season, at least on paper, already looks much more promising than the last one.
All right, so I guess we'll start with the roster lock, because there's a bunch of things that have changed.
Yeah. Basically,
there is no roster lock, and in order to I pointed this out, like, there was a huge problem if you don't do a roster lock, in the sense that the way the DPC points work, a bunch of players could game the system, so to speak, right, and get into TI that way. So what they've done is they've actually given more leverage to teams, because now the teams own the DPC points, but if a player leaves, the team loses like 20% of their DPC points. So this is actually a very clever way of going about it, in my opinion, just because you keep the teams in the game and they gain more power, but they don't gain so much power that like a player doesn't have any kind of leverage against them. Because I think in Dota 2, like, player leverage is the highest among all the esports.
Yes, I agree, and like you pointed out, that I think that's been like a huge issue beforehand. Like, the fact that teams had a lot of power, or not necessarily had a lot of power, but I think one of the reasons why individual players had the points in the last season or in this season is because we've had a couple of very prominent examples where players get shafted last minute and they sort of feel screwed, right? We had AY getting kicked from EG last minute, didn't find a team. We had Misery and what's his face, Weeha getting kicked very last minute. They had to shuffle in like the
that ended up being great for Misery and Weeha.
Obviously, yeah.
Revenge is always great in my book. Just pointing that out.
It did end up great for him, but obviously, in general, like, a player gets shafted, can get ruined. The team doesn't really get punished for it, right? But now they do, because they get like 20% point reduction, which I think is fantastic, by the way. 20% point reduction is, if you look at VP right now, they had like what 10k points.
Yeah.
If you remove a player, suddenly that's 2k points less. Obviously, at some point you don't really care anymore, because
at some point you're so ridiculous it doesn't matter. But
yes, but still, like, if you're fighting for the top 8, that definitely matters. I think like, if you lose 200 points, especially since the point allocation next year is going to change again, because we're going to have less majors.
Yeah.
So instead of 9 majors, we'll have 5 majors, and that means the overall total point is going to be reduced. So losing a player definitely can hurt And then the whole 40% reduction as well for the next event. If you play with a player that isn't part of your team, you only earn 40%, or no, 60. You only earn 60% because it's going to be reduced by 40%. So there's really harsh punishments for kicking a player out of your registered team, but not hard enough to like
punish the team or punish the player completely, right?
Yes.
And that's what I like about it. It's like it feels like it hit like the right mark, right mark, and deals with like the issue of roster changes in a fairly like fairly smart way, in my opinion. So hopefully, all right. So you're part of a team, actually, part of Complexity.
Yes.
So your organization's probably been well. What do you think about it from an organizational point of view? Because I think it's good for them, but what do you think?
I think it's definitely good for an organization. If you, as an organization, let's look at OG, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So OG as an organization, they just lost 2 players because 2 of their players decided to leave the team and join like a quote unquote more promising team, right?
Yeah.
Like in the old system, would have been screwed like completely. You still sort of get screwed in this new system because you lose like 40% points. But if you've already accumulated some points, you still, at least get to keep something. You're not completely out of the running as well. So if you have like a pretty good shot at TI already, but like you don't lose a guaranteed qualifier spot, right?
Mm-hmm.
For like the selfishness of one player, gives you also more leverage when negotiating new contracts or perhaps negotiating new player acquisitions. So if, say, halfway during the season, like for us, for example, when we decided to kick Kyle, we could have negotiated better with other players and be like, yo, we already have like a spot at the qualifiers like guaranteed, or we're already guaranteed top 8 or something.
Yeah.
I think it depends on the team, obviously. But
depends on the team and the situation, but yeah.
Yeah, but generally, I think it's a benefit.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of, I mean, it definitely sucks for teams that have like, let's say, selfish players, like when one player just decides to leave the team.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess you're always going to get screwed either way if the player just decides to leave the team. So
yeah, like you can't really do anything about that. But at least like the player, the player isn't like incentivized. Like the old system was like, oh, I still have all these points, doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. All right. So another point is conflict of interest. Basically, they've finally done it. I can't believe they've done it after like making jokes about this for years. Like, man, EG and Alliance cannot be allowed to be under the same owner. So I'm just sitting here like, wait, VG has like 5 different teams, LGD has 5 different teams, and CDEC has 5. Oh wait, CDEC is also owned by LGD, so really they have like 10 different teams. Like, are you really serious about this? And apparently they finally pulled the trigger. They are like, fuck it. It is time to stop conflict of interest. I respect this. What do you think?
So there are 2 things to this rule that I think are worth highlighting. One is the fact that obviously this only affects participating at the international. So what you could do is technically not change anything at all and just pre-TI be like, who wants this roster? Anybody want this? Oh, IG, I see you didn't have any team that qualified for
Jack,
TI.
my friend from Cloud9.
Yes.
You want to buy in just for the TIs? Like that could work, I guess.
I think there are a lot of ways to sort of like bypass this rule. The other one would be, I mean, how much is Na'Vi not part of ES Force anymore? Officially, they're kind of not the same company anymore, but unofficially, And that's the same with LGD and CDEC and like even Navi, even EG and Alliance back in the day.
VG
like,
and Jeremy Lin, yes.
Yeah, like yeah, technically they have a different owner, maybe they have different management, but that's like, well, if they still decide to run their organization in basically the same way and still decide to share all like sort of like trade, not necessarily secrets, but you can still run two teams in the same way without being officially like the owner of both, right?
Mm-hmm.
That happens both in regular sports, and it's not gonna. It definitely happens in esports as well. It has happened in esports as well. Like EG and Alliance, technically in 2014 or afterwards, I wouldn't. No, I think 2014 they were also officially not owned by Alex Garfield both anymore. I think they were already owned by Jacob at the time, or
somebody else. Yeah.
Yeah. So it feels like, I don't know. It's like an official. It's good for Valve to address this. Don't get me wrong. I think this is really important.
But
I think it's absolutely.
But the teams in the scene can dodge it, basically.
Yeah.
Like get find different ways around it, and then it'll be up to Valve again to see if they want to push us any further.
Yeah.
Right.
I will say that, and I think God bless Mali, if you follow him on Twitter, he brings up a really good point, or a couple of good points actually, because, and one of the things why I didn't think Valve would ever address this at Dota 2 was the Chinese scene. The Chinese scene, as you've illustrated, is very, it's like very interwoven. Everybody belongs to the same person effectively, and there are even rumors about LGD and Avicii technically even belonging to the same empire.
No, not surprised. It's a monopoly.
Yeah.
They technically own me too. Shout out to VP Esports.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh right, yeah. Ooh. But yeah, the thing for me is though that a lot of these teams, a lot of the players that we see right now, were sort of like born into the scene or had their chance in the scene because of the like existing structure that the Chinese built with the CDEC youth teams, right? Maybe had like CDEC was specifically built for maybe to have him grow into that superstar that we see today. And a lot of the other players that he plays with now, or like that are superstars, like pretty much all of LGD actually came from youth teams.
Yeah.
That we see that were owned by other teams. And obviously there are things to be said about Ace and how China and how the scene in general runs.
Rest in peace, Wings.
Yeah, but still, these players got their chance because of these organizations, and the tier 2 scene in China works, and the youth system sort of works, at least better, works better than the other regions because they have these organizations investing so much into a lot of players. Like LGD has like what 20 players under their wing or something.
Yeah,
but I mean, obviously that has the potential for like some really shady shit at TI or like any other event, but still at least to help the scene.
Yeah, and I won't say it's like all great for that, just because like the way like China works, it's like if you have a superstar player, let's say somebody like Maybe, but if you don't have the right team, he can't transfer to a different team. He's stuck in that LGD uniform for like years, basically. So like that, I'm just curious how it's gonna like affect China, because like nobody really, I can't imagine the Chinese are going, like, I guess they can find ways to work around it, but I feel like the way it's going to pan out is going to be very, very strange. So I can't even predict it. I will say though, like the youth thing does work, but I do enjoy a team that can come out of nowhere like Wings did, right? I think that's pretty cool.
No, you definitely have a good point, and I think one of the things that a lot of people have been criticizing about Ace is also the fact that a lot of like in the West right now, right? A lot of the top teams, or some of the top teams, were born out of like player-owned organizations, or like we see a lot of new organizations join the scene. OG is a player-owned org. Secret still is a player-owned org. I don't know.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. There's like these organizations that come in and play around basically, but in China it's a very closed system because of, well, Ace.
Yeah.
So we could technically see new teams sort of like play around in that more new organizations, or ideally that would allow new organizations to like play around in that market. But of course, Ace is still going to have like a firm grip on everything, and that's the thing, because Ace controls everything, and because Ace is so interwoven with these organizations, because obviously Ace was founded by managers from those organizations and owners from those organizations. The fact is that Ace can still just pretend like, oh well, this is a new organization, instead of VGJ it's WJ. Wow,
shocker.
Exactly, that makes it just like, yeah, they're gonna be forced to do some change, but I 100% expect these teams to just have some sort of like workaround that.
Yep.
Worst case scenario, they're just gonna sell more merch because they will have more brands.
Oh, I don't know if you know about this, but basically, Burning is coming back with DK.
With DK,
yeah,
that is pretty cool. But again, DK is one of the organizations that already basically existed or was already integrated in Ace. So for him or for Team DK to sort of like come back is not an issue. But if you and I wanted to make it like a Chinese organizations, I don't know if we could get into it. Like,
no, we'd have to bend the knee, and then even if you bent the knee, you'd still get screwed over probably. Like that's kind of how Chinese esports is. Like,
yeah.
Yep. All right. So next question. This is one you brought up actually. Was like how you think this will affect viewership? Because listen, between you and me, I don't actually give a fuck about viewership. Like beyond the fact that oh look, that's a nice number. Let me just watch this game now. So like I'm like one of the only people who like didn't give a crap about the Facebook thing, as far as I could tell. But what do you think about the viewership?
All right, this is not necessarily only viewership, but I think the viewing experience is just gonna, in my opinion, improve because the scene, the way at least they outlined it, is very streamlined. Like you can follow. All right, this major qualifier is gonna lead into this minor qualifier, into this minor main event, and then into this major main event. Like that is incredibly like easy for people to follow. Like they can immediately follow, all right, these teams made the major qualifiers, but these teams didn't, so they're going to have to play the minor qualifiers. So we're going to see these teams again, then we're going to see these teams in the LAN event, and the winner of that is going to, I don't know, I feel like for viewers, it's going to be so easy to follow because this year it feels like every event was kind of pointless. I did think that, or not pointless, but it felt very
it's stacked
very hard to follow.
It's stacked on top of each other, basically.
Yes, very stacked. Especially since every tournament was like obviously broadcast differently, but this way you have the minors and majors connected. So there's a chance that broadcast or TOs can technically combine these events and these qualifiers to have like a strong narrative. Because again, I thought in this season it was really difficult to say, wow, next event, this is what you need to follow, this is what you need to look out for, at least for casual viewers, right? But I don't know, I feel like for the viewers this is definitely an improvement. Streaming platform aside, which by the way, I know Valve hasn't made this, like hasn't officially said something like this, but I would be very surprised if they didn't like unofficially say, yo, nah, you can't do Facebook because let's face it, nobody liked it. Nobody liked it, really.
Gotta get that money somewhere though. And Valve ain't opening that compendium again. So
that'd be so sick.
Like,
that'd be so sick.
Like I keep saying this is like, why would they have the answer? Like they already solved the answer. It's just like they're like, fuck you guys, you don't get the answer anymore, and here we are.
See, the thing is, at least that's what a lot of people assume, is that Valve doesn't need to do these things anymore because they have their own system. Like any compendium or any sort of like whatever you release for these tournament organizers would detract from their own product, which is currently Dota Plus. And Dota Plus as a subscription model, like that's a lot of money. If you on top of it release major specific compendiums, so especially cosmetics, I don't know, you'd have to introduce a lot of things for these compendiums that Valve doesn't necessarily need to do. Like if they just kept it for themselves, it's like more money for them effectively. I mean, hey, I'm all for it. I would love it if, you know, there were like major specific compendiums that help the tournament organizers, because I think it's a lot of good. It's like an easy way to sort of support the tournament organizers without forcing them to, or without forcing Valve to give them money effectively. But
yeah.
That's apparently not going to happen anytime soon, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But again, for the viewers, I still think this is a big improvement. There's also less majors and less minors, so there's better focus on what tournament is good. Because this season, how many non-DPC events were there this season? Was
not very many. Like
Galaxy Battles, which got their major status revoked, and that's basically it.
Yeah.
I mean, see, like going into the DPC season last year, everybody was like, yo, you know what, people are gonna like, there's gonna be more emphasis on DPC events, and like they're gonna have more prestige than the other events. But guess what, if every tournament is a DPC tournament, there's no more prestige to go around.
Yeah, basically. It's just the way the human mind works, basically. Yeah. Like listen, I actually don't care that much about how like prestigious event normally is, as long as I get to see the best teams. So obviously I'm not that affected as like everybody else. But I understand like the point of view you're coming from. Is like, okay, so it basically like casuals find it much easier to follow this more structured thing. I will say this though, I think one of the reasons they did this like DPC wasn't as attractive is because they didn't go full WWE like I would have wanted them to. See, listen, think about this. Last ESL, which one was it? Birmingham. You know what I would have done if I was in control of that particular arena? I would have had the 5 Virtus Pro guys drive in Mercedes into the arena in 5 different Mercedes and then walk up on stage. See, I would have done that. I would have done that.
I've heard rumors about that was actually the plan for like Hamburg.
Oh, was it? Okay.
To have teams drive in the arena in a Mercedes, but apparently they couldn't do it, or like it was not like really feasible in terms of like security and shit, because like the paths were very narrow and obviously had like seats in there as well, so they decided not to do it. But I was told that was a plan. I'm not sure if that's correct or not. Yeah. But honestly, I agree with you. I think a lot of tournament organizers these days are actually pretty boring when it comes to making the event special. Like, you know what people deem special these days? If you have like a cool grand opening, like if you see Epicenter, they just have like a cool light show and they have like the intro, like a voice saying like, "Oh, EG," in like a very deep voice. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool, I guess, but you know, this kind of 2014 guys. I would love it if tournament organizers got more creative with their events, because as a viewer, as a consumer, I'm getting pretty bored by these events. Like in terms of like outside of the game,
because obviously for me the game will always be the most important. I'm not sure about others, but for me it's the most important. But like, you can do a lot of interesting stuff outside of the game, right? And you can. That's actually why I'm not surprised. Like when Thorn basically said he was invited to a bunch of these Dota 2 events to act as the heel, because like he would be like if you just went to like the Global Offensive sub during like the last Starlighter, like there's a bunch of clips of just like Thorn like roasting people, right? So like it adds like a different element to the show, and Swindles does have a part of that in him. PPD certainly has a part of that in him, but neither of them are going to be sticking around very long. PPD's already gone back to being the leader of the great North American leader, and I doubt Swindles is thinking of this as a long-term plan.
Yeah, he definitely would want to play. Short-term, definitely he wants to be a TI as an analyst, but long-term he definitely wants to like win. Like he's way too ambitious to just sit back and cast. Yeah, like at some point for sure. Like he's
basically like. I don't know if you saw this, but I basically wrote an article those like there are like certain players that are literally going to die on the battlefield. I'm pretty sure he's one of them. I even picked him out as one of them. He's this guy. You're literally going to have to drag his dead body out of the game.
Actually, I'm not too sure about that. Like I can definitely see him fall back once he's like gotten a title. Like once he's gotten that big title, like if he
maybe that could happen. Yeah.
Like he would probably retire. But yeah, no, I definitely think like Dota 2 esports needs more than what we have right now. Like in terms of like outside of the games.
All right.
It's super boring. But yeah,
there's actually a TO that's actually watching this. Go back and look at your history, and specifically look at Brood War, the OGN production, because they actually understood all that WWE shit I'm talking about. Because like, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there was this one finals with Flash and Effort, and here's how their grand ceremony worked. Effort was lowered down from a crane from the roof into the arena, and then what happened with Flash was they opened the gigantic wall, and then you see a fucking plane driving into the driveway, and he's driven up to the arena. That's pretty sick. Or their trailers are always really sick. Like if you've ever seen like the comic book trailer of like, it was like an MSL back in like 2007, like basically, and the way they structured the tournament, you could actually probably do in the majors too, where like if you think about this, right, like you know how we do a bunch of seeding in Dota 2, and I actually really like this, but there's another way you can dramatize it, and that's for the first seeds to choose their opponents and then to broadcast that.
Ooh. See that'd be pretty dope, especially since we had a couple of events where teams were actually like choosing their opponents. What was it? The Summit.
Yeah.
They had the teams choose their opponents. Like, why not use that to your advantage and like create some content around it and be like, yo, literally have Solo walk onto the microphone and be like, I choose you, EG, or something. Like, I don't know.
Like,
something.
could you imagine when Lil was on Verse Pro, we had that shit going on, and Lil went up there? So that would have been crazy. Or imagine now, like it was Optic and EG, and PPD goes up there, is like, "Hey, Sumail, I heard you wanted to play me at the major. Now's your chance." Like yes, that would have been sick, right? I love that.
Again, I think a lot of these tournaments in Dota, at least, have gotten very stale when it comes to these kind of things. Very boring. So yeah, I'm open for anything. It feels like every tournament is trying to play the safe game. You know, they're like, oh, the biggest thing that we're gonna do is like have like some sort of like opening act for the finals or something, like ESL always does, and that's it. But hey, we're esports. Why not be creative?
Yeah, I would specifically like hype up the dramas, man. I'd be like, yo, Misery, you need to go out there and you need to give out like a fucking revenge speech. You need to tell everybody their shit. First, you go up to Puppy, say you were shit. I beat the shit out of you at TI. Then you go up to EG, say you guys are shit. Nobody can fucking lead you. Fly, you're shit. You are a choker at TI, and then just go back onto that stage and whoop the shit out of them. That's what I need you to do, Misery. That's what I need you to do. I'd be down for that. But obviously, not everybody thinks like I do. Not everybody's quite that crazy, I suppose. And all right, so I guess we'll go to the next topic. All right, so I get I thought this on this topic, but I think we both agree on this. Basically, we still need to know about the patching for next year, because I think that changes a lot of how we might view this tournament circuit going forward.
To be fair, they did release a blog post a while ago where they said that there's going to be like a couple of more like every 2 weeks patches basically, but then like obviously there's going to be like a period pre-TI where they would slow it down and basically not have any patches anymore. Like at some point we're going to have like a patch that's going to be that patch for TI effectively. And then I thought then I think they said something along the lines of we're going to go back to like a slower so they're going to definitely go back to like fewer balance patches.
Yeah, because I think the way they should structure it is like maybe one after the major, because I feel like that's the most opportune time to do it at this point. But like I don't really like, I personally don't care as long as it like doesn't conflict too much with the qualifying major system. So yeah, just point that out. I think we both agree on that. Like the patching's been basically a failure. Like, I should have said this multiple times. Like, it's been a failure this season. And I think you could have seen it was going to be a failure because Dota 2 is such a complex game. Even if you, like, did small things, it would change, like, everything. And they didn't do small things. So, here we are.
Yeah, I found the patch notes. They were like, there are a few more bi-weekly patches planned, with the primary one scheduled around the final major and the TI qualifiers. After TI, we expect the first half of the new season to have longer periods between gameplay updates. That is so fucking important because like we both said multiple times, these patches have definitely had a lot of impact on the pro scene in ways that they shouldn't have. I keep going back to this, and this is not because I hate Mineski or anything where I like keep bashing on them for fun. I actually really like those guys. I actually know one of the managers. I want to say I'm on pretty good terms with Ice, but they shouldn't have won DAC. They just shouldn't have won DAC.
I mean, they did. Sure, yeah. No, they totally should have because of the patch and because of a few other things. But, you know, without that patch, it'd be much more questionable. I'll agree with you there.
That's what I'm saying, though, right? Like, if that patch should have not been so influential to allow them to win that one tournament.
Hey, man. Ice is a god.
It effectively secured a TI invite for them.
Yeah.
Because nobody else was able to play Pangolier. Oh, you know what? Guess what? The second best team in that event? Oh, it was Optic, because they too had a Pangolier player.
Thanks,
actually, Optic wasn't necessarily the second best team because they still had CCNC.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I definitely think patching is one thing that needs to be reversed, needs to be addressed. Good that they have, and good that they will. But yeah, it kind of already. I wonder though, because they specifically said the first half of the new season to no longer have longer periods between gameplay updates. Sounds to me like for the second season they're gonna plan to do something similar again, or at least gonna experiment again.
Well, I guess we'll have to see. Like, it might be okay. Let me look at the dates again. No, it might be okay if you did it like between, let's say like you did 2 patches and like a major cycle, right? it might be okay. Actually, no, just the way they're structured is pretty bad. Actually, like
The way they're structured is pretty bad because if you look at the
they're
qualifiers,
they're all
they are
super close to each other.
super close, and especially, for example, you can't hold a qualifier a one balance patch and then patch 1 week after the qualifier for a new patch. Like,
Yeah.
what I could see is, for example, what they could do, in my opinion, is, so if you look at the third major, for example, or actually even the second one, actually every major, I guess, after every major that they release like a huge balance patch, or a semi-huge balance patch, I guess, whatever they want to call huge, and then have the next sort of like major circuit, because that's gonna last for like a week, for like a month or 2 or 3, 2.5 maybe.
5 days.
For the, yeah. No, for like the next major circuit. So basically, from the major qualifiers to the end of the major main event, which is usually like a month and a half, I guess.
No, I was talking about like between each major circuit. It's like 5 days.
Oh yeah, so yeah, basically, yeah, no, right. Between each major circuit, give teams like 5 days basically to figure out the new patch, and then run the major qualifier.
Yep.
I think that'd be great because it would force every team to do this as well, because major qualifiers majors can't have any invites. Teams would have to play all the qualifiers, meaning that all teams are in the same boat, because that wasn't the case before.
Yeah.
Like in this circuit right now, the way it is, like teams can sit out events and then they can practice their hero pool or whatever for the upcoming major, right? Because one of the reasons nobody was prepared for Pangolier is because a lot of teams were just traveling before that event. Like, they were just pre-DAC, they were still traveling, going to other events, and like some even had like short breaks because they were so exhausted from traveling.
I think like you really don't listen. Do you really have like the time to practice something that may or may not fucking come into the game?
Exactly, and that's why I think this is gonna make sure that every team is sort of in the same boat. Obviously, teams that didn't go to the previous major or previous minor or whatever are still gonna have some sort of advantage, but at least you're still gonna play the online qualifiers for it, like and not the actual event. I think that's much better.
Also, shout out to EG, because let me put it this way: this is a team that's been invited to a majority of these majors and minors, and somehow, despite all that extra time, all that extra practice, you couldn't surpass PPD. I'll just put that out there. You couldn't do it. You should have bent your knee. Should have accepted tyranny into your lives. Should have given up on democracy, even though you're from America, and accepted dictatorship.
I guess that's sort of the thing that we could talk about next.
Oh wait, one more thing actually. 5 majors, and from my count, 8 tournament organizers.
Oh right, now that's a good one. I think it's gonna be somewhat brutal, but at the same time, I think it's gonna be pretty obvious who's gonna get one and who is not gonna get one.
I can only think of 2 that should get one, but who do you think gets it?
So for me, DAC 100% gets one. You could technically put DAC and Perfect World Masters in the same boat, because they're both run by Perfect World, so it's technically the same organizer. So Perfect World 100% will get a major because they're Valve's distribution partner in China, and obviously
they're the favorite son. Yes,
they always run the biggest event in China, like with DAC last year, DAC this year, and they are technically running the Super Major with PGL as well.
Yeah.
So I think DAC is a lock for sure. I would heavily be surprised if PGL doesn't get a major, because PGL historically has had a good relationship with Valve. They've run production for, I want to say, TI7.
Yeah.
And they're going to run production for TI8 as well. Like
they're quite good, so yeah.
And and they've gotten a major this year. They've gotten a minor earlier, and now they're doing production for, or they're hosting / running the Super Major as well. So that's another big event they've on their portfolio, and they're really liked by the community as well. So for me, those 2 are a lock. I heavily doubt that DreamHack is going to get one, because DreamHack historically hasn't put much effort into running in a standalone Dota event. Like in CS, we see DreamHack Malmo, which is fantastic.
Yeah, they do their masters in CS:GO, but they don't do it in Dota for whatever reason.
Yeah, exactly. They don't do them in Dota, and I doubt that Valve would greenlight a DreamHack Summer, DreamHack Winter major, because those venues are the worst. Absolutely outdated for esports in 2018 to have like a major esport event in fucking Jönköping, Elmia in Sweden. like that name alone should tell you how far away it is from civilization.
I could see them doing a minor there, but I can't see them doing a major there.
Yes, minor maybe for sure, because it's automatically always going to have like a stage for esports ready anyway, and the infrastructure is there. But I just don't see it for the major, especially since it can't actually fulfill the quota for the major, because majors need to be hosted for like multiple days.
Yeah.
And that's just actually I'm not even sure if it's going to work for a minor either, to be honest, because 6 days.
Okay, that's true.
The one for DreamHack.
Maybe they'll have to bust out in Masters, basically.
Yeah. Basically, if they wanted a major, yeah. But Epicenter, I think, is one of the teams that or organizers that could potentially have one if they don't host it in Moscow. I've been told that, or there's a rumor that one of the reasons why Epicenter previously in the previous major season didn't get an official Valve major is because Valve didn't want to run one in Moscow. Obviously, this might change now because they technically did have a major this season. So maybe Valve doesn't really care too much with the next season either. But Epicenter, I think, would be good luck just because they have the money to run an event of that size. Like at this point, you have to ask yourself which organizer can actually feasibly run an event of this magnitude without having any sort of like drop off in terms of quality. And there aren't many that come to mind here. That's why I think there's like a couple organizers that are safe lock. ESL might run one. They obviously have Hamburg and I believe Katowice already. I honestly think Katowice might actually fall into the second majors. I'm not 100% sure actually right now. They already have Hamburg and Katowice, which aren't going. Like I think Hamburg is definitely already can't be a major because of the dates, unless they change the dates. Which I doubt again because they already obviously
they already announced the dates. It's already locked in.
Yeah, exactly. So, but as far as I know, ESL wants to run another third event again because they obviously this season or a fourth even, because this season they ran Genting and Birmingham in addition to Hamburg and Katowice. So I wouldn't be surprised if they ran one in
Genting. Genting sounds pretty good
year,
actually.
Something along those lines, yeah. Because I think if you want to run like 6-day major event, Southeast Asia is going to be much cheaper than Europe. But yeah, I think those are safe lock, like PGL, Perfect World, Epicenter, and then ESL probably. I think those are safe locks. MDL technically as well. I know that they do have the funds, and they are very popular. But
I thought they actually ran some of the best events this year too.
I agree. I think they run really good events. And what bothers me though, and I think this might be something that Valve might consider, is the fact that they never fly out their talent. They have yet to fly out their talent, I think, at least for the past like 2 years or so, because they just constantly it's for them it's too expensive to run English production on site.
Yeah, makes sense.
I think it's totally fair, of course, but if you only have 5 majors and one of them doesn't even have proper talent on site, I don't know. That might be something that Valve might object to. Who knows?
Yeah. All right. So you think Starladder's the one out?
Starladder might be the one out.
DreamHack's definitely out.
DreamHack to me is definitely out. I just
Guess C is definitely out. Like they've only done minors, so it's like, right?
Yeah.
It's rough. Yeah. It's rough out there. Obviously BTS is out.
BTS definitely is out. There might be one of the minor hosts actually. Let me see the dates.
They could be.
They could run the minor in December. Yeah. Like actually no, never mind. It's in January.
And then of course there's a possibility. Actually not a possibility. It's just my own hope that maybe MLG gets one, because I've always loved the old MLG Dota 2 events personally.
That'd be so hype.
But obviously now that they are stuck with Activision and Blizzard, seems very unlikely. But I personally have always loved their events.
Also, how likely would it be for there to be a Dota 2 major in the US? Doesn't feel like that feasible right now. Like visa situation is really bad, especially for CIS teams.
Yeah, it would be tough. But I mean, like I said, still, I always remember MLG Columbus. Who doesn't remember that?
Was a fantastic event. Like I mentioned on Twitter, it's not even the fact that Speed Gaming had that miraculous run. It's actually the fact that MLG was so like fan focused. Like they were actively communicating with the community beforehand and afterwards as well, constantly asking for feedback. That's one of the reasons why Speed Gaming got invited to the event anyway, because all the fans were like, "Yo, please have Speed Gaming at the event. They're like our favorite team, and guess what? They invited them on short notice. I don't know. It was just a lot of fun as well, and yeah. Would love for MLG Adam to be involved in Dota again.
Yeah,
he's a good dude.
All right, so last topic. Actually, I don't know how big this one's going to be, but it's gonna be. We're gonna be talking about the Dota 2 scene in general, but through the focus of the SuperMajor, and
let's want to go with EG because we already kind of talked about it.
Yes. So basically, 2 years ago, I said this. I said before TI6, I even said this. I said EG need to bend the knee to PPD because despite the fact that they were one of the best teams going to that TI, I thought they didn't have the clutch factor, they didn't have the leadership, they didn't have the adaptability to make a TI run. I was proven correct. They bombed out with the worst showing ever, 9-12. And PPD came back, and I thought surely they would accept PPD into their lives. But no, the only one that did was Zai. Zai left. EG has continued on a downward tread to the point where a meme has become created called "Is EG the biggest waste of potential we have ever seen in the history of Dota 2?" Technically, it's not even that far off because like if you just think about it, like were there worse? Like it depends on how you like rate these players, but was there a worse like set of potential wasted? Not really. Like it's
well, the thing is, it depends on what kind of scope you're talking about. Because at the end of the day, if they do well at this TI, are people really going to look back on the season and be like, "Well, it's going to be like that was the biggest waste of ever," right? Not really. I think if they bomb out a TI, yeah.
Well, I think it already is because they changed rosters, so there's technically a new roster.
Well, yeah, but at the same, I still think that like any result at TI would overshadow it. That's like why we look at that secret lineup and still think they failed with Arteezy, right? Because
I mean, think about this then, right? Like EG, the only two players that have stuck around there are Arteezy and Sumail. Everybody else, actually, I guess Crit's still here, so I guess that's fair. I guess the three core are still there, even though they lost Zai, and they never used Zai correctly. They lost Universe, they never used Universe correctly. They lost Fear. The Fear was never used correctly in that lineup either. So here we are.
So one of the things,
and I guess Misery too. I'll throw him in there.
One of the things that I think is really important to note with the team is the way that Misery and Zai have talked about this team afterwards. So Misery gave his interview with BTS. Zai was on like this podcast with. Why is Zai not on our podcast? Huh?
I don't know Zai, so you'd have to make the connect, not me.
Anyway, so both of them basically said after they got kicked or after they had been with the team, both of them effectively said that the environment in that team was extremely toxic. Like, they didn't necessarily say it that way, but the way they described it made it seem really toxic, especially Misery, of course. Like, his statement was very damning, especially since he just got off the team. Like,
I love me some Misery rage.
Yeah, there was apparently a lot of, like, really depressing atmosphere, like, very heavy atmosphere. And I think that's a really toxic environment, obviously. Like, obviously, that's a toxic environment to play in, so... that is a really important part here with Evil Geniuses because obviously that core hasn't changed, and you have to wonder like if there's just such a heavy toxic atmosphere that multiple players of multiple iterations. Remember,
Zai was a year ago.
Exactly, Misery and Zai didn't play together on EG. Both of them had their separate experience. Like their experiences are like 1 year apart, and they still say there's a toxic environment in that team, and I think that should show that that toxicity comes from the core, and the core is Arteezy, Sumail, maybe Crit. Who knows which player is exactly? So, or obviously it's probably like between those three. Like everybody probably has their own portion of toxicity that they carry around with them. So, yeah, you bring in S4, you bring in Fly, and but if the success doesn't come in, is that toxicity just gonna fade away because they bring in like the most positive player on earth? I don't know.
No, dude. Listen to me. Listen. I once made this comment on Twitter like 1 or 2 years ago. Basically, I said this. There are actually... This was before Kuroki's obviously great run at TI7, but I basically said this. There are actually 3 captains in Dota 2 history in which you want to attach yourself to if you are trying to make a TI run. First is Puppy, obviously for multiple reasons. I think he's still a pretty great leader overall. But not as good as like Kuroki is nowadays. Then there is YAEP. YAEP is a guy who has literally done it with like any shuffle iteration that's given to him. Like he just gets it done. Whether or not you believe in his answers, he makes sure everybody on his team believes in his answers, so to speak. And then the third I chose was PPD because remember this. Remember this fact is in 2014, Eternal Envy also gave an interview about the toxicity within EG, and he said, this is literally the most toxic team I've ever seen. But when they go into that fucking server, they remember it's a job, and they do their work, right? So toxicity doesn't necessarily matter if you have the right guy that can keep it together. And True. We've seen EG with PPD, and we've seen EG without PPD, and I'll go ahead and say it, PPD was the one keeping it together. Maybe... because Fear was with EG after PPD left, and he couldn't keep it together. Maybe it was a combination of the two players. I'm not sure, but certainly PPD seems to be the main contributor. And so it's like, go ahead.
You know, it's actually, this is why I've always been saying that I think if this is gonna sound unrelated, but I've always been saying that PyCat needs a leader that can sort of like assert his own ego over PyCat's ego. Mm-hmm. Like one of my biggest grubs with PyCat's career has always been the fact that he's always brought a certain level of ego to his team, which
can be good.
Which can be good, but it generally results in like a bit of a toxic environment where like pretty much every team he's joined, he always at some point stepped up to become the drafter or the leader, mostly because of some disagreement and like obviously because he disagreed, like because he wasn't a fan of the way the team was run and like the leadership of the team. Like he questioned the leadership of the team effectively. And I always said that if you ever want him to be like the best carrier in the world or one of the best carriers in the world, give him one leader that will make him shut up. And one of those people, I at the time I was like either Puppy or PPD. And I mean we see now with Optic that obviously PPD can do it as well. And that's pretty much what you were saying. Like I think PPD has that personality and has also pretty much the success to back it up at this point, to say, well, you either follow me or you lose or you get kicked or whatever. And I mean, like we see from this current Optic lineup, like following him
seems pretty successful to me. Yeah, basically like the point I'm getting to is like basically PPD is one of the all-time great leaders. I think with this Optic lineup now, he's basically proven it because look, remember where PyCat came from. It's like, yeah, he might have been a great player at points, but it's like he never had the results, did he? Like, there's that fucking picture of him like sleeping with the trophy because he never had one before, right?
He literally just won his first LAN event in Dota 2 or something.
Yeah,
like it's absolutely crazy because PyCat, nobody has ever questioned his individual skill, but or rather, he was never able to like always play at his top. Mostly because he's never been used in the correct way, because either he has had disagreements with his own captain or because his idea of how to play the game wasn't always the correct one either. But he seems to be following PPD pretty well right now, and I think this team is working.
I remember like Capitals was like surprised on the guys, like, wow, PyCat's really this good. Like, what the fuck happened? Because he was never that good before, right? And you got to say,
this is what I'm tooting my own horn. 100% I'm tooting my own horn. I've been saying this for years. Like, PyCat is legit one of the best carriers in the world, but he needs that leader. Like, he needs that leader. And when I saw him, or when I saw that first rumor of him getting, or of him joining with PPD, I was like, yep, well, we're gonna see it. This is gonna be PyCat, like, #1 for sure. And honestly, I think right now he's one of the best carriers in the world.
Yeah.
And I hope he's gonna continue proving it. But Optic, well, I mean, we're going to talk about them at some point.
I mean, I talk about them same time as EG, basically, because they're interconnected. But basically, yes. I will finish this point off of EG. Basically, going back to the toxicity thing, you know what? I don't actually have proof, because obviously there's no statistics, but I personally believe S4 has always been a player who needed a good team environment to perform. I've always believed that. And the reason I started believing this was because at TI4, that man crumbled. That man, like, he got destroyed, and he was a TI winner before that. And I remember that, and I remember thinking, Arteezy's blaming Kuroki, but S4 was the one who was truly terrible, because it was god-awful, right? And
no, definitely.
I was like, what happened to S4? And then he moves over back to Alliance. He's like he's okay there, but he joins Fly, he joins OG, and that's obviously a team famous for its great team chemistry. And he was an absolute monster, even though he switched lanes from mid to off lane, right? So I thought, okay, this guy's great. Putting him on EG, I'm thinking to myself, isn't this guy just gonna break down like again because of the inherent toxicity problems of the fact that you're going to TI, the biggest high pressure boiler cooker in Dota 2 history, and here's a different fact is Fly has never performed as a leader at TI. He just hasn't.
No, I agree on both parts, actually. As for, that's a really good point. That's definitely one of the reasons why he went back to Alliance, because he knew that's like a... It's not necessarily like comfortable, but it's an environment that he's familiar with, and it's something that he knows, like people that he can trust, where he knows he's had success with, obviously. And I don't know, I feel like this is a huge gamble with the EG thing, for sure. For both sides, really. And I think they really need success at this event for this team to work. Like, if they lose, if they drop out tomorrow against Optic, I think it's going to spiral. It has the potential to spiral this team into, like, a really dark path, really. Especially because the NA qualifiers are going to be brutal as hell.
Oh, man, I can't wait. I can't wait. I love me some drama, but...
yeah. As a Complexity member and fan...
You're probably hoping for it, too, because...
I'm actually still pretty hyped, to be honest, because that's going to be really dope.
Not only is it dope, but it's also because if Optic knock out EG, you know that's actually one of your ways to get into TI, because EG is going to have an internal civil war while you're just out there playing your game. Like,
yeah.
Right?
I just hope that, and I guess it's something that we could also talk about at some point, or maybe even for another show, actually, but I hope that Valve actually gives NA more slots than,
like we can talk about it now, but because we just don't know.
We really don't know. But if Optic doesn't make TI as a top 8, I think NA needs 3 slots, like 2 direct and probably 1 like wildcard or whatever, or like at the very least 2 slots.
Yeah, VG Storm is legit. Optic is legit, like, and they need 1 more.
They definitely need 1 more, in my opinion, as well.
China's pretty good too. Was like.
But the thing with China is even their top 4 teams aren't that good anymore. Like outside of
they've fallen off, but I feel like the guys that are coming up are still pretty legit.
Nah, but the thing is, I wouldn't give them more than 5 slots in total.
Yeah, that's true. I wouldn't give them more, but
I think they already have 4.
You know who actually needs them a lot. Also, is C.
C, yes.
I think C needs a lot of them.
I've had this discussion with Knoxville actually today, and. I think he has like some really he was gonna blog post about it, and that's gonna be a really good one as far as I can tell. But effectively, crunched the numbers, and what basically what it boils down to is that NA basically is one of the best regions actually right now in terms of like this season, and their slots probably won't reflect it because they've had like so many top 4 placements at like these DPC events, especially lately now, especially in comparison to.
Yeah, the DPC can't reflect it because VGJ Storm gets no points. So
yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing. VGJ Storm doesn't get any points. That really hurts. I don't know. Again, I just think that Valve needs to give NA like 2 to 3 slots at the least.
Yeah. So
actually, 4 is definitely overkill. But 2.
No, 4 is too many. 3 is fine. I think C definitely needs at least 2.
Yeah, they also. See, the thing is, I think you kind of want to give C 3 slots just because I think Mineski, TNC, and Fnatic are 3 isn't definitely would be like if I
feel isn't Mineski already in or almost close to in anyway?
Oh right. No, but I'm saying like 3 slots in total, right?
Yeah, 3 slots in total is fine.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's keep talking about the SuperMajor because that's currently going on.
Okay,
anyway.
so back to Optic because I will also toot your horn because I'm not talking about PyCat. I'm talking about 3-3. Because when that move happened, you were like, listen to me. You got to listen to me. This man is the offlaner. This man is the man who was the offlaner. And you're like, how is Optic letting Zai play offlane over this man right here, 3-3? And you know what? You were absolutely correct. And unfortunately for you, they figured it out at your worst possible moment at IEM Katowice, or ESL1 Katowice, where like, wait, Complexity, you were right. 3-3 needs to be our offlaner. You're like, oh god, no, why do they listen to me now? But listen, ever since that changed, everything changed for Optic because I actually wrote an article. I'm not sure when it's going to come out. I actually wrote it today. Basically, if you just look at the way PPD thinks about team play, the way he thinks about Dota 2, he has always made sure that his team identity is built around his polarizing players. He got the first one in PyCat. The second one was supposed to be CNC. He failed. But he got his second one in 3-3 because 3-3 is an amazing offlaner. And not only is he an amazing offlaner, he's a very weird offlaner.
He's a super weird offlaner. He's like, he reminds me a lot of Bone 7 actually. Obviously
without the throw,
without the throwing part and without the being bad part occasionally. Because 3-3 is super legit, but like the way he approaches the game, the way he sort of like doesn't care what like sort of like the standardized way of playing Dota is sometimes reminds me a little bit of Bone 7. Maybe it's like a forced connection because they're both offlaners, but it just feels like very Bone 7.
Listen, Bone 7 is definitely a very, very weird offlaner. I can totally see it. Like when I try to explain offlane to people, like, okay, there are basically two schools of thought. There is Ice, and then there's Universe. And then there's this dude called Bone 7 who actually doesn't exist within this spectrum, but we're going to ignore him. And 3-3 is very much not in this spectrum either. So I could totally see where you're coming from. And the thing about 3-3 is, like, he can play with whatever resources you give him. So if you give him all the resources, he's going to carry the game. But, like, for instance, think about the Night Stalker pick for, like, Optic, right? It's like, you pick that, and then all of a sudden, you can play that as PPD, actually play that at support. 3-3 can play it, or PyCat can play it. And this is actually why I credit PyCat a lot, because even though, like, they used PyCat often as a hard carry, he also showed he's a pretty good space creator, pretty good frontline player as well. Shows a lot of diversity in his play, doesn't it?
He has like a huge hero pool, PyCat. That's absolutely insane to me. PyCat has played like pretty much every role in competitive Dota 2 at this point. Most of them anyway, and his hero pool is super deep. Like a lot of times when you say that about a player, you still expect like a reasonable drop off in terms of quality, and I still think it applies to PyCat to a certain degree. Like obviously his, let's say, Night Stalker is not going to be as good as his Luna, for example, but still in general I think PyCat, like his hero diversity is incredibly strong, especially as a one position player. I think if you're like a 2-position player or even like a 3-position player, your hero diversity sort of like comes with a job.
Yeah.
As a 1-position player, not so much most of the time, also because obviously your draft or the way you play the game sort of relies on a certain carry. Most of the time anyway, it relies on a certain carry style as well. But I don't know, he does it all. Like he split pushes, he team fights, he creates space. He's like he can be an initiator as well if he wants to. Like I've seen him play it all.
He's actually I agree with you. I actually think he's very similar actually to two other players, Fear and Bernie. Yeah. In that sense, right?
No, I can see it. Yeah, I agree.
But I think like right now PyCat's better than both. And the fact that he's like so diverse can enable 3-3. Because 3-3 himself, like he can actually carry games. Very strange in a very strange way, but he can do it. And so, and then there's also the fact that he got to play like even though he's like super weird, he can't play traditional offlaners fine as well. You see him with like Darkseer, I remember. Actually, this is actually really funny to me. Basically, we've seen like EG for 2 years without PPD, right? I have never seen them pull off a classic EG with PPD team fight within those 2 years. But in this particular tournament, you saw it with Optic, with like was it like 3-3 and Zai? Like remember that perfect like Cyclone?
Right, the vacuum, the vacuum.
That's like that. That's like a pure like old school style EG fight where like doesn't matter how far behind we are, we can pull off the perfect fight and win, right? It's very interesting to me, and also the fact that like when you go back to like DAC, like you see like 3-3 can actually play the 4 position too, just like not traditional forwards. Like I'll go to the off lane, I'll play as Clock, and then Zai take over as an actual 3 as Pangolier, and then we roll, right? That's like he can play all sorts of styles. It's very interesting like off laner to look at in current modern Dota.
Honestly, I thought that they did somewhat okay even when he was the player, just because again I always thought that he should have been the offlaner, but even when they decided not to put him as the offlaner, I thought that he did pretty well. But yeah, I am really happy to see him back, and I'm also really happy to see actually Zai back as support, because I think this is probably the best patch for the 4 supports that in a long time in a lot of ways. Like if you see if you look at the best players recently, especially at this major right now, I think if you would highlight pretty much every 4-position player, like Zai, Crit, FY. Like there's, I think it's no coincidence that all of them are right now really really good because like the patch right now really complements them. Like we don't have a lot of like heavy single player based roaming, which I think really favored certain other players such as Jerax, and what's his face? Remember Boboka on his Monkey King Ricky?
Yeah.
Like he was like the embodiment of the single player roam, but we've sort of moved away from that for a long time now, and we're sort of like at a like greedy support is sort of like in again in a lot of ways. Like you can be greedy support again. Like playmaking for supports is really favorable right now, and that's why I think we see a lot of these players being really good right now because it really like this patch really helps them, and that's why I think going into TI, the team with the best 4-position player will definitely be in like, or teams with the best 4-position players will be in the top. And that's why I think Optic right now is also heavily benefiting from that, having Zai there, and that's why I think also EG is playing, or one of the reasons why EG right now in this constellation works is because not only do they have crit in that 4 position, but they also have Fly who knows how to enable crit as well.
Yeah, like I think one of the great like going back to the meme, obviously like EG biggest wasted potential ever. One of the biggest travesties was that for some reason they thought they could get crit and Zai to work together.
Yes.
I thought that was like the biggest travesty of Dota, not like ever, but it's like one of them. It's like, come on, guys, you have like 2 of the best players, but you surely do not have enough gold for both of them, and it turned out to be true, right?
That might legitimately be the biggest waste of potential ever, because if you have 2 of the best 4-position players, and none of them are going to excel, that basically means that is the worst potential. The worst waste of potential, or the biggest waste of potential.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, no, I do think that this event is going to highlight the 4 positions again, and to a degree, it already has. But I think the best team at the end of the day is going to be a team with a really, really strong 4-position player, and that's why I'm going to look out for, like, I don't know, LGD in my opinion right now is probably the favorite in my opinion. Like the way,
FY got a fucking Infinity Gauntlet. You can't mess with that.
No, he legitimately is the best player.
You know what's like, you know what's fucking crazy about FY now? It's like he figured it out. He's a leader and a superstar player. How did he do it? I don't know, but he did it.
I honestly think one of the reasons why he's able to lead the team better than he was before, like one of the reasons why the old Vici Gaming failed was because FY failed as a leader. Definitely, like he himself said that he couldn't lead as well. I think one of the reasons is because coaches are not allowed to draft for the team. And I think it really helps alleviate the pressure of one player if in the beginning of a game you give that responsibility of like drafting and like basically setting the game plan in a lot of ways to somebody else. Because calling in game isn't really that difficult because you kind of have to do it anyway. Like every support at some point is going to be a shot caller in the game. Like every player at some point is going to be a shot caller during the game. So that's not really the difficult part. The difficult part is going into the game with a set strategy and with a set draft and knowing how to draft against the opponent and what kind of game you want to play against a certain opponent. And I think for FY, not having that responsibility, not having that burden, actually really helped him. I mean, we see it now. I'm not sure how much QQQ is actually involved in the process. I was told he does the drafting and he does the game plan for them. So I just have to assume that this is one of the reasons why we see, God FY again.
Yeah, basically, like, another way to describe it is actually economy of outside resources. This is like a very strange way to think about it, but it's something I learned in StarCraft 2 is basically the reason like a bunch of these players are so good is because they practice a certain scenario, a certain build over and over again. So it becomes muscle memory at a point. But if you're the leader and the drafter and you have to be a support player, superstar support player, you don't have enough time to do all 3. You just don't. Like, it's also why, like, I don't blame anybody for not picking up Pangolier. You don't have time to pick up Pangolier when you're traveling and when you're practicing and when you're scrimming, and you still have to play and keep up with all your current heroes as well. It's like, that's just too much. It's just too much. Most players can't do it. So it's like, so I definitely can buy into your theory. Like basically, that QQQ is like, FY, I got the draft. Just take care of your own self and call in the game, and it's worked, right?
And I think that's really good because ultimately, yeah, draft is part of the game, but I think I don't know. I think it's really good to have coaches as part of the draft because As much as it is part of the game, it's also not part of the game, if you know what I mean. Because ultimately, it's not like actually 5 people playing the draft, right?
Yeah, it's one man.
It's literally one person. So in my opinion, it might as well be the coach. So I think that was a really good change from Valve. And
I will say this though, there's actually a disadvantage for somebody like PPD, who's actually been able to do both.
Yes.
But obviously, he's like a 6 player, very different from like a superstar player.
Yes.
And I've also yeah.
Yeah, that definitely is a disadvantage to also teams that just can't afford a coach.
Yeah, also a disadvantage there. I will say this for final bit. Shout out to EG because you guys had a bunch of players who had diverse hero pools, some of the best superstars, and all of you all said, every single one of them actually said this at some point in a different interview. Listen, PPD is very good, but it's not like he does the draft alone. You guys had like 2 years to prove me wrong. 2 years. Come on, man, get it together. But
see, that's the thing, right? PPD has a lot of like naysayers, and I've even heard like among the pros, people talk about PPD as if like the like there are other reasons basically for why EG won that year, the TI, and PPD is overrated, etc., etc. I mean, I'm sorry, but right as it is right now, he's sort of like proving the opposite. And in fact, actually, in my opinion, he proved it at TI6 already. Like he took a team that was at basically nowhere, and he took him to TI like top 3 at TI6 again.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, like PPD has kind of already proven it, and he's in the midst of proving it again. So
like,
I don't know.
Like,
let the results speak for themselves.
Yeah, just think about this. Every single one of his TIs, he had a roster issue. First one, Fear's injured. Second one, he had to play with Aoi and Sumail because Artesian Zai left. Third one was like that fucking giant collapse. This one, Optic, he's playing with completely different types of superstar players because Artesian and Sumail were mid players. Now he's playing with a Pycat and with 3-3. Very different styles. Still proving it. Whereas, like I said, EG essentially failed for me as like drafters, as players, as creating a coherent team identity.
No, I agree with that. One last thing I also want to say on Optic is that I still think, despite all of the good things I've said about Optic, despite all the good things that I keep saying about PPD, I thoroughly believe that if they don't replace CNC, they're not going to be like anywhere near the top 3 at TI.
No, I don't think so either. But it's like, here's my problem with that. It's like, who the fuck are you gonna get at this point?
No, you can't. I mean, you obviously can't get anyone anymore.
So like it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter. Like the die has been cast. They have to go with it.
Unfortunately, yes.
Right.
And yeah, but yeah.
All right.
Any other team we're talking about?
All right. Let's just look at the bracket. Let's see here. Liquid Secret's actually come back on the come up because they had a pretty severe like downturn for a little bit, and they seem pretty good here. What do you think of them?
For a long time, actually. I think pretty much from the start of this year, they've been pretty bad. Like after DreamHack, they sort of been on a downward spiral. I think one of the reasons is the sort of like patch. It favors 4 positions again, and it allows YAEP to shine more.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've had a bit of a break as well, which helps them a lot. Because I mean, this team just needs that, and I don't know. I legitimately think that the patch also, on top of like highlighting 4 positions, I think it also allows individual players, like especially in the laning stage, to be more effective. Mid 1, for example, I think is a good example.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think the patch right now just really fits them. And they've also gotten just a necessary break. I think it's inevitable for any for a lot of teams actually. And honestly, if you look at Liquid, Liquid still had like good placements here and there, but I still think they had a significant drop off as well since pretty much DreamHack actually. Like also since the beginning of this year, Liquid in my opinion has been falling off, and I think it's just natural for teams that attend so many events. I want to say Liquid and Secret pretty much have attended.
Almost all of them. Yeah, definitely Liquid has.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think it was inevitable for them to become sort of like tired. I don't know. Like we mentioned earlier, like when do you even practice anymore, right? You're just traveling all the time. When do you even practice individual heroes? And again, I just think
because you have to repractice every time the patch comes out. That's every 2 weeks, man.
Exactly. So I think they've taken some necessary breaks here and there, and I think right now they're just sort of like finding their groove, which helps because again, I just think they have a good patch right now. And I'm not too worried about them when it comes to TI. I still think this is like easily like a top 8 team, But further, I don't know. It's a bit of a toss-up because right now a lot of teams are like heating up right now.
Yeah.
So for them to heat up during this major would actually be really good because it gives them a lot of confidence in this off time.
Yeah, really good indicator at least. And I actually don't know how they are as players, so I can't say if they'll bring it from this event to TI or not. Like it changes, it varies a lot from team to team.
Yeah, definitely.
In my experience,
it's definitely a difficult call, which is why I think it's not really something that I would be too worried about Liquid.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think Liquid, no matter what, is still going to be like a really big contender at TI.
Yeah.
Like even if they were to lose to Secret now and then lose in the lower bracket as well, I think they're still a team to be reckoned with. But honestly, like right now, do you have them as like? Do you think they could defend the title? Just like if TI happened next week.
I don't think they could. Like
yeah, me neither.
Like I feel like. All right, here's my problem with Liquid. Is actually my problem with Astralis of last year. Actually, you get them into a game, get into a tournament, get into a series. Yeah, there is a chance they could beat the best in the world, but they couldn't beat all of the best in the world. They just couldn't do it. Like that's like basically what happened with Astralis last year in CS:GO, and like at the major where like they beat SK is like, oh my fucking god, they beat SK. Then they lost the Gambit. So I have a similar problem with Liquid. Is like if you put them into a series against Virtus Pro or LGD, you know what? They could probably win. They can win that. They wouldn't be favorites, but they could win that. But you put them into a tournament like TI with its rigorous format, with days upon days upon days against all of the teams powering up. Liquid can go far, but they don't have what it takes to be a championship level team right now.
At least not right now. No, I agree with you. Right now, to me, VP and LGD are just so much more clutch right now.
Mm-hmm.
To me, anyway. I don't know. It just feels like every series that they play, they're always at the top of their game almost. Yeah. Which I just don't see for Liquid. Like I legitimately actually bet or predicted rather in my compendium TNC over Liquid because Liquid on a good day is definitely going to beat them, and they did beat them 2-0. But the thing with Liquid as of late right now, in my opinion, is that they don't always play their best game. What I think could have, or maybe did help them at least for this event, is the fact that they had a significantly weaker group than other teams.
Mm-hmm.
I say significantly because Team Spirit is not to be underestimated. They did win the first game against Liquid as well, I think.
I didn't watch it, but somebody told me they probably should have won against Evil Geniuses too. I didn't watch it though.
Or you definitely should watch the third game versus EG. That's a good game.
All right.
It's a really good game. A lot of throws though as well. Like it's a good game in the sense that it has a lot of entertainment as well, but a lot of also bad plays. But yeah, no. Liquid again. I still think that they had two fairly easy opponents with Spirit and Newbie. They've always been good against Newbie, so there's no doubt in my mind they would win there anyway. So I think they just got a lot of confidence here against TNC as well. Secret will be definitely a sort of like improving match, but at the same time it's still Secret. Like we just mentioned how Secret themselves haven't really been too good lately either.
Mm-hmm.
So is that really going to be the big test? No, the big test is definitely going to be Virtus Pro, LGD, even teams like VGJ Storm and Optic would be
pretty good test, right? Just see how they stand. All right, so we talked a lot about Optic, but let's talk about VGJ Storm because this is a team where it's like, listen, remember last year I was like, you gotta listen to me, Skim. Resolution is actually the best player in the world, and he's got to prove it on that OG lineup. Totally didn't happen. Totally busted on that one. But he did prove me right in the end once he joined VGJ Storm. Because my god, this guy is a fucking monster if he gets the right team.
All right, I need to go on a bit of a look, I have absolutely zero against any of these players from VGJ Storm. In fact, I really like MSS. I think he's a super cool dude. I actually really like Sneaking as well, even though he's has a bit of a whatever. I have absolutely nothing against VGJ as an organization. I really enjoy hanging out with Jack, but by God, I never expected this at all because individually speaking, these four players prior to Resolution joining them have played some of the worst Dota I've seen. Not even as a team together, but like individually, they've been on so many bad teams. They've played so much bad Dota. MSS switched to the 4 position, which, I mean, it kind of fits him, and he's playing incredibly well. But before that, I was like, why would you switch? You're such a good offlaner.
Mm-hmm.
Snaking, in my opinion, was playing at his ceiling, and I still think actually he's playing at the moment at like his top ceiling. But if he can keep it up, he can. I mean, go for it, obviously. But apparently, he was the missing glue. Who knew?
Yeah. This actually I didn't know. I just always believed that Resolution was a fucking god if you got him in like the right circumstances, and he's proven it again somehow with like the most unlikely of teams. This is like more unlikely than his. Actually, it's not more unlikely than his Empire one, but it's definitely more unlikely than the DC one. The TIs,
No, definitely.
Right? Like that Empire one was like ridiculous, but
DC one it was unlikely, but at the same time, if you look at the individual skill of the players at the time, I don't think anybody really doubted that all of these players could have, at least in other teams, if they had actually chosen to be teammates with other players, they probably could have been good players on good teams. But these players like Yawar literally has been part of like 100 failed NA stacks.
Yeah.
And then a couple more SA stacks as well, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Sneaking, same with SVG, MSS as well. Like MSS has been literally on the worst EG or one of the worst EG iterations I've seen. Like these players have all been part of failed teams, and also been one of the reasons for the failure of those teams as well.
Yeah.
Like yeah. I don't know. It was just absolutely crazy to me that this team could do anything, and right now they're actually playing some insane Dota.
Resolution, man. I think he's the fucking answer, apparently.
No, I mean, he is, but at the same time, it feels like everybody else is playing like so
everybody.
better as well.
Like I'll talk about Resolution. Everybody else like played way better than I ever expected them to ever play at. You know what I mean? It's like really, this was in them the entire time.
Yawar, for me especially, one of the big things about Yawar always to me was the fact that he would just
choke.
I don't know, inexplicably choke, throw, just not be in the game from the get go. But right now he's honestly one of the better players at this, or not necessarily one of the better players at this event, but like I think if they go like 1 or 2 rounds, I think it's reasonable to say he's one of the better players at this event because he's pretty good actually.
Yeah, he's pretty good. So yeah, I am pleasantly surprised that VJJ Storm is so good. So it's like it's so random too. It's like you're this good now that you can no longer get DPC points. Okay, like okay.
But that's like one of the issues with the system, right?
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they can't get any DPC points anymore.
Yep.
I mean, if you look at some other teams, Team Spirit, for example, Team Spirit also suddenly showing up. Obviously, they're still sort of like bad. I mean, they still.
They're better than they were, but yeah, I get.
But they're better. They're definitely better than they were. So yeah, I don't know. To me, that's one. Like VJJ Storm is a prime example of why the system needs to change. Like this team shouldn't be automatically excluded from TI contention simply because they peaked too late. Yeah.
And speaking of people who peaked too late, actually in this case peaked too early. These Chinese teams, man. Newbie.
I was literally, when you were going with that, I was like, oh, who's he talking about? Newbie? Oh wait, no, it could be also VJJ Thunder.
I was about to say that too. I meant all of them, but yes, all 3 of you guys have failed me. All 3 of you have failed me. LGD is the only true Chinese team. The rest of you can get out. Just get out of my game. I'm sorry, it sounds more vicious than I intended it to be, but these 3.
I want to say one thing. I'm not sure if I did this on the show or if I did it privately or on Twitter or whatever, but I actually predicted VJ Thunder to fall off because I've seen this from Sila teams before, man. I've seen this from Sila teams. I ain't surprised. Also, part of me kind of wants to feel vindication for AO who got kicked.
Mm-hmm. Part of me also believes Yang should never be part of a good team.
Well, that as well. But yeah, no, I don't know. These Chinese teams, especially Newbie, man, it just feels like, how did they even make the upper bracket? And then I look at their opponents. Oh, they played Navi and Team Spirit. I guess that's how they made.
Navi is true trash.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, Newbie, it feels like Newbie's the closest team to LGD, but they're still so far away that makes me wonder, like, why do these teams still get top 8 over like VJJ Storm or Optic?
Okay, so basically, this is kind of going back to the DPC thing. Like, I think I actually said this in my article. I wanted the DPC points to be weighted more heavily when the closer you get to TI, just because you get the more competitive teams. And these 3 teams are exactly the kind of teams you don't necessarily want at TI, even though they have the results from the DPC points to get into it. because I feel like none of them are playing particularly great Dota right now. Like they're playing like middle of the pack Dota, and that's like, come on, man, get it together. Especially you, newbie, because I told I've been railing on and on about EG, but I've railed forever about newbie. I'm like, you guys need fucking YAEP or some kind of player like that. You need somebody to change it up, but they've never done it, and now they're going to grossly fail when TI comes around.
That reminds me a little bit of TI. I want to say TI4, was it?
Mm-hmm.
One of the TIs, you could tell the Chinese teams were also just really dropping in terms of performance, but they still stuck together anyway because TI, we're probably gonna get TI. Why should we change? And then they all failed miserably, and that's when they all decided to, all right, you know what? Let's just split. Oh yeah, it was TI4. IG, IG was there. No, was it? Oh no, it was, yeah. And then LGD as well. Like these teams were like, but IG, hey, you won TI, but please change your roster.
Mm-hmm.
You're obviously awful. Why do you like? But obviously because they were the TI, or obviously because they were pretty much a safe pick for invite anyway. They just stuck around, but they were just straight up awful. And I think newbie as well is like one of these teams that I don't think they're gonna perform well at TI. I think they're gonna be like, maybe they could even still get top 8 depending on the bracket, depending on the group, and like
maybe it's like, and that's like the best case scenario too, right? It's like I do not like newbie's chances.
At this point, I actually rate the chances of like whoever comes out of the Chinese qualifier, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think every year we've always had like a really good Chinese qualifier team, or at least for a while now. So
feels like those guys
expect that to be better.
Yeah, it feels like those guys are really like in tuned, whereas these guys are like, we got into TI, we're gonna cruise. We don't really have the drive or passion to improve right now. It's like, or they burned out. I'm not sure. Like,
it's not even whether or not they have the drive or not to do that, but at some point you're just gonna hit your ceiling. Like,
yeah, that's true. Like newbie hit their ceiling forever ago.
Every team has an expiration date, and you have to accept that. Like, in the history of sports, no team has been able to go on forever, right? Yeah. Every team has their expiration date, and I think it's in esports especially that like
there's only 2 teams in the entire esports history I know of that broke that rule. Virtus Pro obviously did that for like fucking like 4 years, almost like a presidential term or some bullshit, and then even then they broke down. And then Wings, guess what? They were trash for like 2 years before they won at TI, and they were never as good. To be fair, they were never as good apart either. So, since then,
well, they have who's coaching them now? YAEP, isn't YAEP coaching them there?
YAEP's coaching somebody, but I forget who it was.
No, he's coaching Ehome, the former Wings players now.
Okay, so I mean, as long as I forget if is Faith Bien on that one or not, because Faith Bien is the only one I believe in of the 5. He's the only one I believe in. So, yeah, you will see if like YAEP actually gets that team through to TI. He may as well also be the best coach, because like that's like an impossible task. So
it's honestly weird that newbie is not doing, or not necessarily playing well. I think they obviously result wise they just made upper brackets, so you can't really say they're not doing well. But I just don't think they're playing well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think honestly I think the patch should complement them as well, because again, what I highlighted was like the 4 position has like a lot of space and a lot of farm to do things again.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see individual laners being able to like dominate either matchups again, or at the very least become, or at the very least being able to outskill their opponents to a certain degree. And I don't know, SECC, I mean, is definitely one of the better mids in the world. So
I mean, he's still good.
Feel like,
I still respect him, but it's like the rest of these guys is like, as a team, I guess, it just doesn't. It feels off. It feels like they need to break up.
Probably, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, all right, one last region to go, because I feel like the rest are VG and VGJ are basically like newbie light. Same problems, not as good. But it's time to talk about SEA, and let's see here. Okay, here's my question, I guess. Mineski obviously has the most DPC points, but are they actually the best SEA team?
No, definitely not.
Yeah, pretty much agree with that.
In my opinion, Fnatic or TNC is better than them right now. Mineski, to me, I've been preaching this for a while now. Mineski to me is just
overrated.
Very overrated. They only got this far, or they're only obviously still in the top 8 because they won DAC, which was heavily influenced by a patch. I really like the team and the players and even management, but I just don't see this team doing well at TI right now. Like, it's not even that the results are lacking, but the way they're playing is just not good, honestly. What I will say is that, again, I keep highlighting this: 4 positions can shine and can even dictate games, and Jabs has proven even at this event that he's like a really good 4 position. But when it comes to individual laners, they have one of the worst mids at this in Moon. I keep joking about this, actually, that, you know, Moon and CCNC are playing for who's the worst mid lane at any given event. And even, honestly, if I look at this lineup again of teams, I legitimately think that even actually Final Tribes mid, like Frost, I have no high opinion of him either. So
okay,
maybe, you know, whatever. But Moon and CCNC are really
down there.
Something.
Really down there.
Something. And Moon, especially to me, it feels so. I don't know. I watch Mineski sometimes, and then I see Moon just totally out of position. And I think to myself, you know what? If you give them just one decent mid laner, it doesn't even have to be the best. It literally can be super.
Yes,
like, honestly,
I was actually thinking of the same person.
If they have super, they legitimately will be a better team, a top 6 team, in my opinion, like 100%.
Both teams, actually, Optic and Mineski.
Both teams, 100%. Like, if you at least can pick. The funny thing is, I've seen Moon play DK, I've seen CCNC play DK, and you can tell that they both don't feel comfortable in it. And it's funny because the way it looks, at least from Mineski, is that they pick DK early on for him because they know that it's sort of like a safe pick for him, but it really isn't. Like, I honestly think he's trash on that hero.
I mean, his only hope is if, like, I haven't seen a bunch of games from this tournament, but I assume at some point they're gonna have to give him Mirana.
See, that's the thing, right? They sometimes force like these comfort picks from him, and one of the games was like a Tinker game because Moon is like a big Tinker player as well, but they force these comfort picks even though they're not really that great of picks in that scenario. It's just because, well, Moon feels comfortable on them, so let's pick it for them. And yeah, it has worked out in the beginning with Mirana, like you pointed out, but that's not always going to work, and it definitely stopped working.
That's more of like a bandage than an actual solution. So yeah, I actually agree with you. I think TNC and Fnatic are both better. I'd actually prefer if one of them got the invite, but obviously that's not how DPC works.
Well, technically it would be, or, well, TNC can technically just win the event. If they just win the event, they will get the spot.
Listen, man, they can beat Liquid, and as a team, they're like way too inexperienced to do it.
No, I agree. Honestly, I would rate Fnatic's chances higher of winning this event. Like, if Fnatic had been here instead of TNC, than TNC's.
Yeah.
Just because, in my opinion, Fnatic with Envy and with Universe have a certain sort of like aura and like sort of like energy around them, or like the certain attitude that allows them to win games.
Certain amount of chaos.
Yeah.
Like,
you know what we basically mentioned earlier about how Mouse Sports and CS doesn't have this. They basically don't have the winning mentality to like keep an era going effectively. I'm not saying that EE has like has it in him to like have his own era or anything, but I think he consistently, more so than these teams, would be able to win these tournaments.
Listen, man,
if he was like a better player.
Listen, man, Eternal Envy, like he pulls off miracles all the time. It's just he's so animated, like he can only pull off miracles. So
that is true.
So yeah, definitely agree with you. I think Fnatic's probably the best SEA team. It's as for TNC, we'll have to see. I feel like they aren't playing to their style for whatever reason. But to be fair, I only saw their series against Liquid, and I was like, yeah, these might be good drafts, but this isn't like a TNC style of play. So I can't really believe in it, and Liquid kind of crushed them. So we will see if they recalibrate tomorrow or today, I guess. I'm not sure whenever it is they play. But my guess is they're going to get knocked out by VGJ Storm.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
VGJ Storm right now is just, I don't know, a really clutch team. Like, if we're talking clutch mentality and, like, has what it takes to, like, win these events, or at least, like, these matchups, like, Resolution 100% has that.
Yo, man, he carried Empire as a caster. Like, how many players can possibly ever say that? I carried this team as a fucking caster. Like, come on, man, that's ridiculous. All right.
At what point? At what point are you like a CIS team? You hope VGJ Storm doesn't make it while you do qualify, and then you hope you can play with Resolution at TI.
I'm sure that's every CIS team's dream. Please Resolution, please fail, so we can have you as a stand-in and then pull off another miracle run. Like, come on. But yeah, that dude is like ridiculous. So, all right, I think that does it for Dota and SuperMajor. Like,
Yeah,
I think we both agree LGD or Virtus.pro is probably going to win this, right?
pretty much.
All right, one last question, I guess.
Yeah, go ahead.
The actual biggest storyline is if Optic gets top 4. Do you think they get top 4?
I honestly wouldn't put it past them. Who do they have to beat? They have to beat EG, then VGJ Storm most likely, and then like
one more
Liquid Secret or something,
Mm-hmm.
or like Mineski Newbie. No, wait.
Virtus.pro, LGD. Like if they get Virtus.pro or LGD, they're screwed. But if they get one of the other two, they could probably do it.
Yeah, I agree. No, it actually would be Virtus.pro LGD. I just looked at the bracket.
Okay, yeah, so they're screwed. You know what? Fuck it.
Well,
I think they're screwed. There's no way they can be Virtus.pro. Virtus.pro has their fucking number.
There's definitely nowhere they're going to beat Virtus.pro, but I can see them beating LGD.
Yeah,
because,
like LGD is possible. So they basically need Virtus.pro to stomp LGD, and they get LGD.
Yes.
So
yes.
That's their win condition. Virtus.pro needs to win, and then they need to play, and then they need to beat LGD.
Unfortunately for Virtus.pro, I actually think they're going to need to run runs at LGD in order to beat them. I'm pretty sure LGD is going to beat them if they do play each other, which is most likely in the semifinals.
As far as I know, they have LGD has 2 coaches, QQQ and Sanchen. Sanchen's going to give them all the notes on Virtus.pro. We will see. Also, did we ever talk about that? That's like the most ridiculous article any pro player has ever done. Is Sancheng's guide board to Virtus.pro. Fuck these guys.
That is absolutely hilarious. That is absolutely hilarious. I think it is so hilarious that they're also playing tomorrow.
Yeah.
Sancheng is obviously Newbie's coach, I think.
Yeah.
So it is hilarious that they're going to play tomorrow.
I love that.
I almost want to stay up for that, actually. It's going to be amazing. And I don't know. I feel like esports, Dota especially, needs more of these rivalries and like these strong sort of like enemies and like antagonists, because I feel like everything's so tame, but like having the Sancheng article was so hilarious, and it's like upbeat, you know, you have like,
and the fucking last line is like ridiculous. My name's Sancheng. My name is fucking Aegis. Like, Jesus Christ. Why weren't you this metal when you were an actual player?
That's actually a really good point. Where was he when he was an actual? Actually, I guess he did win TI4.
No, like his ego was kept in check back then. It was like, come on, that's true. Like come on, man. You could have shown a little bit of it. That would have been sick.
That's true,
right?
No, but that's why again I really like this whole like, you know, Virtus.pro as like sort of like the villains of the scene in a lot of ways. Well, I guess.
But I mean, they're less so for Lil, but certainly for the Chinese, they're villains.
Yeah, for the Chinese, yeah.
Yeah. So all right, you have anything else you want to talk about?
No. Once again, we managed to fill like 2 hours, I think.
No, man, there was a lot of Dota, man. A lot of Dota.
To talk about. No, I'm looking forward to this end of the SuperMajor, or like not like I want to have it end, but no, I'm looking forward to the rest of this tournament. It's super exciting. I'm super hyped actually. I hope that the next year is going to have more double limb formats, like extensive.
I think it's going to be very likely because there's so many less tournaments. Like, it just makes more sense. But
that's the thing, though, right? I'm not too sure about that, especially since it's also only like 6 days, and like I don't know. I could see double limb tournaments, but then still like lower bracket, like best of one elimination or something. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess we'll have to see. You know what? Instead of just doing group stages, they may as well just do double limb seeded.
Double limb straight up. Yeah, no, I don't even mind that. I legitimately don't even mind that.
Like, it's not like I care that much about group stage. I don't know about other people, but it's like, why not? Why not? So I'm sure Knoxville will tell me why not at some point. But until then, why not? All right. So any shout outs?
Yeah, shout out to Complexity. I'm actually going to be at RLCS this weekend.
Nice.
So that's going to be... It actually sucks because I won't be able to watch much Dota.
Mm-hmm.
But don't tell anybody at Complexity that I said that. No, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
And then I will give a shout out to myself for telling you 2 years ago, EG needed PPD. My God, did they need PPD? My God.
They kind of still do, but
and they still do.
I guess we'll see.
But at this point, PPD's not going back because he has a better team. At this point, it's over. Like PPD is not going back. They're gonna have to go to him. All right. See you guys later.